Good evening, 49er faithful. Welcome to another off-season episode with your host, Rob Schuh, joined today. Very excited to have Aaron from 49ers First Takes. You guys know him well. You know his channel. You know him on this channel. If you don't know his channel, the description for it is down in the link below. But Aaron, this is the first time that you and I have done this since an unfortunate end to the Niner season. So not to drag up any, negative outcomes from that game, but how are you processing the 49ers offseason to this point, Aaron?
It's always tough because, nothing's ever kind of guaranteed as far as like getting back to that point.
It's not.
So that's why, as much as a lot of people were saying, hey, you guys are good, you're going to be back there again. There's no guarantee.
Right.
I mean, my brother were talking about it. He's a Dolphins fan. We all know the Dan Marino story. Made it there his first year and never went back. So part of me has a feeling of the Niners kind of coughed up a good opportunity. Another part of me is that they got as far as I think they could, and they just kind of ran out of gas. So there's kind of differing feelings. I'm still kind of bummed that they're not in the Super Bowl, but
right.
I mean, we are in off-season mode. We've already had some coaching comings and goings, and
yes.
There's been some Jimmy talk. I know I've seen you had a couple shows. I've seen some of my fellow YouTubers have a couple shows. We're kind of running out of topics, so some of them are regurgitated. That's why, I was like, I want to get on with you. You were like, well, let's think of some new stuff. I'm like, I don't think there is. So yeah. That's kind of where I am right now.
It is. I mean, it's the same basic premise for what the 49ers face right now. I agree. I think it is both. I think it is both a lost opportunity by the San Francisco 49ers to have gotten as close as they did and to be paired up against a team that was, at least on paper, seemed to be a favorable matchup against the Rams, and then come kickoff to find out that it was going to be against the Cincinnati Bengals. I mean, between the two teams, the 49ers were 3-0 prior to the start of the game on Sunday. So I think it is an opportunity, a missed opportunity for the San Francisco 49ers. And you also have to recognize that for where we were at 3-5 in the season, it was an unprecedented type of outcome to have gotten as far as we did on the road in the playoffs. And it is not terribly surprising that at some point the San Francisco 49ers ran out of gas, luck, good fortune, however you want to phrase it. Things had to go exactly right for the Niners in order for them to be playing in the Super Bowl this weekend. They didn't go exactly right, and I'm still pleased with the overall season. I'm still grateful for the way in which it turned out. I was reminded today as I went to the store and I saw a promo set up for the Super Bowl, and I was like, damn it, that's right. There's a Super Bowl this weekend, and the 49ers are not frickin' in it. So that's tough. And it's tough to watch an NFC West rival go on and potentially bring home that Lombardi. It's tough. It's tough to have Rams fans, getting back at what they perceive to be a lot of slights thrown their way. I have had several instances of that nature in people coming back into the comments and things like that.
Yeah, I got attacked the other day. I actually must have accidentally deleted one of the things that he was saying, but he was like, guy came at me. He's like, so what's going to hurt worse? What hurts worse? Deebo crying on the sideline like a little, or your quarterback, giving the game away and just going on. And, I kind of went the whole, we didn't buy our team route. I'm like, man, I was a little hot under the collar when it first happened. Yeah. Usually I diffuse all that by just giving compliments and stuff, but I wasn't in the mood for complimenting that. It was in the morning. Something had pissed me off the day before. So I was in a combative mood. Usually I don't let it go, because it's just pointless. But yeah, I've had a little bit of the arrogant, cocky Rams fan come at us. For every payo time, there's 100 other jerks that just want to throw it in our face. So whatever.
Yes. But I will say, I was there in LA. I was very decent to people and people were very decent to me. On the way out of the stadium, for anyone that, hadn't gotten to know me in that section, then there were definitely some rowdy Rams fans that had clearly had too much to drink, that wanted to talk trash and not just be a graceful winner. For me, that's always confusing to want to keep receipts and go back and talk some real trash and get underneath someone's skin after they've already lost. To me, once you've got the win, that's what you came for. So go celebrate it. Don't turn a positive thing into a negative thing by then going back and getting after that fan base. But that's just me. That is just the way that I view it. Let's get into a little bit of news that came out today that may or may not be relevant. And that is the simple fact that it's being reported on Twitter, commented on, that Kyler Murray has removed the Cardinals from his Instagram account. I gather that it's not entirely true across all of his social media platforms. Someone then raised a picture of his Twitter account still having some reference to the past season, but it would indicate, those types of moves tend to indicate that there is unrest between the individual and the organization. And when that's your freaking starting quarterback, that's not a good thing.
I said to you right before we went live, I said, maybe he's going to but maybe he's going to go back to baseball. Hey, listen, I'm not a trash talker to other fan bases. That's not my style, because I feel like it comes back and bites me. But if the the Cardinals has some sort of unrest within their roster or their building, whatever, I'm happy, because that means that's better for the Niners. So part of me, if I'm friends with a Cardinals fan, I'll be like, dude, I really feel that sucks. But at the same time, I'm not really that disappointed. So who knows? Maybe it's a positive for the Niners. Maybe he goes back to baseball. Maybe he's felt slighted by the organization, and, it'll affect them next season. So I'm kind of turning a negative for the Cardinals fans into a positive for me.
Yeah, I mean, Silent Seth, one of our sneakerheads, calling out Kyler having some issues. Trey might be the only quarterback in the NFC. I mean, it's pretty wild to look at Russell Wilson potentially on his way out of Seattle. I won't believe that until it happens. Anytime you have a franchise quarterback, I got fooled last offseason thinking Aaron Rodgers was done in Green Bay, and I'm not getting fooled again until he's actually out of Green Bay this season. I'm not getting fooled with Russell Wilson until he's actually out of Seattle, because these franchises will throw everything and the kitchen sink at these types of guys to keep them around, and rightfully so, because of the value that they bring both on the football field but also off of it, right? I mean, your starting quarterback, when it is an established veteran who you have used in all your marketing promotions, like, you've gotten season ticket holders out of that guy's face. You've gotten ad revenue. Like, there's a lot going with that. So to me, this could be as simple as just a little bit of unrest. It could go as far. I think his rights are still owned by the Oakland A's. So it would be fascinating to see him not just return to baseball, but return in the Bay Area. We would be elated with that news to get him out of Arizona and into Major League Baseball. I'd be excited with that. But yeah, to me, this is just an ongoing situation that needs monitoring during the offseason.
And it's so early. Right now, it's like dead time for everybody but the Bengals and the Rams. So, we're all us content creators are all grasping at any little bit of something that can turn into a half an hour video. So it's really just like, ooh, here's 10 minutes I could babble on about, so I really don't think it's more than anything until something is like you said, concrete. I felt for the Aaron Rodgers thing last year too. I'm thinking, oh, great, and we'll play them this year, and we'll wipe the floor with them. Didn't happen. I mean, we beat them in the playoffs, but still, it was a struggle. And as far as Russell Wilson, there's been talk that the coach is going to stay and that Russell might end up staying. So,
honestly, these things have a way of getting worked out. Raphael 562 Niners, also a sneakerhead on the channel, coming in at Rob. What do you think of the Anthony Lynn hiring? That one is a topic coming up in just a moment, Raphael. Stick around for that one. That is one of our topics here No question about it. We will get into that. That Niner guy, also sneakerhead here on the channel, saying at Rob Schuh, Rams have like 1,200 fans. So, I mean, they need to be loud. But hey, the next Joe Cool is coming for them this week. I hope that's true. We're also going to talk a little bit about the Super Bowl, but spoiler alert, I'm having a hard time rooting for the Los Angeles Rams in this one. I typically want to root for the team that knocks my team out because I like the idea of having lost to the eventual champion. There's something to that you could still be the second best team in the tournament if you lost to the people who ended up winning it all. But there's a part of me that's pulling for the Bengals in this one.
Yeah, I'm definitely pulling for Cincinnati. I have older coworker. She's been a Bengals fan her whole life, probably since before I was born. And she is the most diehard, just like geared up. She goes to the game. She'll go to drive to Cincinnati. She goes on to Cincinnati sometimes. And it's just like every year we and her talk. I remember we talked in 2019 when we crushed them, and I was just like, but it's still early, and I didn't enjoy the ride like she must be this year. I was kind of like always thinking the Niners are going to drop it the next game or something, but
you let that negativity come in. You let the skepticism ride.
I'd always
Aaron.
do that. I'm trying to get better at it. I talked to my therapist today about living with the now and
good,
not to the future.
Good.
So
that's where you want to be, in the now.
But yeah, for her, I pulled for people like that just because, like, if we went against them, I think it would have been a good matchup for us. I just think we match up better against the Bengals than say like the Chiefs. So that's kind of disappointing. But I mean, the Bengals haven't won a Super Bowl, I don't think, in their history, and they haven't been there since the 1988 season, the year of the famous drive, Montana to Trent,
John Taylor.
With John Candy in the audience, that whole thing.
Man.
So, yeah, it's been a long time for Bengals fans.
And I have met some pretty nice Bengals fans. I went back and looked at the insider information video that I did that Bengals week. I had a great guest on, Taylor, who did a Who Dey podcast around the Bengals. I'm pulling for him. He talked about that, his entire lifetime waiting for the Bengals to get to this point. It would be so sweet to take out, what is effectually a team built for this moment in the Los Angeles Rams. But I digress because we are going to get into that topic a little later, as well as this one. But Pete brings up an interesting point, asking at Rob, Joe Judge for special teams coach. Is this true? I've not seen anything reporting it yet, but what I will say is he was a favorite to land the Raiders job, and they just filled that position. So we're going to talk about Hightower being out. We will work this one into that conversation. We're going to get to that in a little bit. Pete, thank you for asking that. And then lastly, wanted to bring in Truth Told, Not Sold, another member of the Sneakerhead crew. At Rob, I was at the Cincy versus 49er game. After we won, I told my cousin, who's a Bengal fan, we'll see you in the Super Bowl. Ugh. Now he's like, you was almost right. I'm rooting for Cincy. Me too. That was the parting comment I made in jest to Taylor as we were getting off of the broadcast. The live version had ended. We were just chopping it up afterward. And I was like, hey, there is a chance that both of these 6 seeds end up in the Super Bowl. And man, it came pretty freaking close.
2 minutes away, really, if you think about it.
Oh, it's
much
painful.
As the Rams want to talk trash. I mean, it's not like they blew us out of the building.
No, I said that to a fan that came in. I was like, hey, it was a couple of plays here or there. And he was like, it wasn't a couple of plays. You were beat the entire game. I was like, really? So if the game had ended at halftime, you would have won that game? Like, you won by 3 points. Yes, physically, the Rams were the more dominant team in that game. But you're kidding me if you're going to try and say it wasn't a close one. AJB coming in at Rob. Here in SoCal, I counted 10 blue flags. 6 were Dodgers flags and 2 were throwback Minneapolis Lakers flags. I guess not very many Rams flags out there. There's a lot of other things to do in LA other than the Rams, and they left them high and dry before, so I can't really blame them. But let's transition into Niners news. Let's talk Niners. We don't need to badmouth the Rams. We don't need to tear down Arizona for losing Kyler Murray. let's get into a little bit about the loss of Mike McDaniel. He is now officially hired by the Dolphins. There have been some great images that have come out of he and his wife and his child on that plane headed to Miami. I can't wait to see his introductory presser. I find Mike McDaniel to be quirky and charming, and I'm here for it. I really want to see what he's like as a head coach.
Did you see that soundbite where he started a press conference by saying, as you guys can see, I'm really like physically and like intimidating
or something? Yes, I love that
and he's
one.
Such a small guy. And I was just like, I love this guy.
Yeah.
He's really football heady too. Like there was some stuff from the QB Collective, I think it was, with him talking with some other people. And man, he sounds like he's like a Kyle disciple, man. It's like him, McVay, or is it McVay? Yeah, the coach.
Yeah, Sean McVay. Yep.
It's just like they all kind of sound similar. They're like football. What's the word I'm looking for? Savants when it comes to like offensive football and how to manipulate defenses and stuff. So, yeah, I think the more I've looked at it and more I've looked at it into him, I think Miami has an under the radar good pick as a head coach, and it'll be interesting to see how he kind of transforms that offense and kind of like makes it kind of like what we run, that's similar kind of stuff. They might not have the same skill position players or the players that run that right now, but I mean, for what everyone said, what they're going to kind of run is going to be similar to what we're running in San Francisco. So be interesting.
It's going to be very interesting. I'm most intrigued to see how the personality fit comes into play, because the reason it's interesting, I don't know if you had heard this backstory, but the reason he opens the pressers with the joke is that was something that was suggested to him. I forget who it is, but he has one of his closest friends is a well-known comedian. And he and the comedian go back and forth as you might expect when they're talking and have the one-liners. And Mike actually has a pretty good dry sense of humor. It comes across a little bit awkward, but it was the comedian's suggestion. Hey, open your pressers with one-liners. Like, come in and shoot your shot. Like, let them know who you are, because that's your personality type, and it'll be intriguing for them to see. And so that was a couple of his early misses were him just attempting to shoot that shot. And I freaking loved it when he first came in. It hit my funny bone right away. I know for a lot of people, it was like, who is this guy? He's a bit of a dork. And so that's my biggest question is, will it immediately win over the fan base and the team there in Miami? Or is there an adjustment period that takes place for him? And I don't think we'll truly know that until, things get rolling in there. Aaron, do you see this as a big loss for the San Francisco 49ers in the football mind that is Mike McDaniel heading to Miami?
Well, I know he was involved in the run game pretty heavily with the 49ers. So in that aspect, yeah, I think it's a huge loss because I think our running game is kind of the identity of this team. It's what we do best. I think that's kind of the identity of Kyle Shanahan since he's gotten here. So in that aspect, I say yes. Part of me also thinks that Kyle is more of the head man over anything offensively. So I don't know if we'll see too much of a drop off personally. I think one thing, the Niners have good skill position players. Even with Jimmy here, they were able to get the most out of a lot of these guys.
Yep.
So in that aspect, I don't think we'll see too much of a drop off. I just think where we won't see the drop off, I think Miami's going to get that spark because he could only do so much here. But now that he's in charge of Miami, he's going to be running the show, running a similar offensive scheme. My brother is a Dolphins fan, like you know.
Yes.
And he's kind of in the meh mindset, but it has nothing to do with the coach. He says it has everything to do with he thinks the organization, he just thinks they're kind of dysfunctional. So he has like a tempered, he has a very wait and see type of mindset right now, just because, no matter who you bring in as coach, if the front office is kind of having some issues, crap rolls downhill, so to speak.
Yes.
So he has kind of that feeling right now, but I'm sure he, once we get to the press conference and stuff starts happening in the offseason, the draft, my brother gets like me, gets reignited with passion. So we'll see.
I'm going to be watching it with bated breath, that's for sure. I agree with AJB coming in here to say congrats to Mike McDaniel. I say cheers, Mike McDaniel. Thank you for your service here with the Niners.
I actually have the same mug, man. What up?
Yes, I say to all his success going forward. Cheers, Mike McDaniel. And I will say, Greg Thames coming in, doing the good work. Hey, it is the off season, so I'm not going to be shy about it. This is the time of year where it becomes a little bit slower. And your likes on this video, if you enjoy the content, if you like it, please do hit that like button. It means a great deal in pushing this video out to more Niner faithful, getting that message out there. If you're not subscribed to the channel, consider subscribing to my channel, to Aaron's channel. All of his information to follow him on Twitter or subscribe to his YouTube channel on 49ers First Takes are down below in the description of the video. And I appreciate it. I know Aaron does as well. Ellis.
I was going to say, there's a comment from someone who I grew up with in the comments right now, who I don't think I've ever seen him in any of my streams or your streams, but I just wanted to say hello to DJ Ease. He's a DJ, like a real life DJ.
DJ Ease.
And me and him have known each other since like the mid 90s. I think the first time me and him ever had any 49er talk and interaction was the year we drafted R.W. McQuarters. I had walked up to 7-Eleven to get the paper, and he caught me on the way back, and we started chucking it up to the 49ers. And that was kind of like the genesis of that whole situation. He's a busy man. He travels the world doing his thing, so props to him. But yeah, nice. We've been 49er fans going way back. So hello. His name is D'Angelo, so hello.
Welcome, DJ Ease. Appreciate that. All right, bringing back in Ellis 10, sneakerhead, who I had up right before that. At Rob Schuh, the 49ers get 2 third-round compensatory picks. Yes, they do. We're going to get into that in just 1 second. I'm hoping they attach one of them to Jimmy G and get a first out of it. Thoughts? That's interesting. We have a topic. We have 2 topics that those bleed into. One around Jimmy's trade compensation, and the topic I wanted to bring up right now, which is that compensation that we get coming back. Ellis 10, hold tight. We are going to get into those topics. And BK, back from the Bay, also says, now since we got 2 third-round picks for Mike McDaniels, what should the 49ers go out and get for those picks? We won't get into that depth just yet, but we will talk about those compensatory picks. So I wanted to throw that out there, that the way in which it worked for the 49ers, they lost Robert Saleh and they lost Martin Mayhew in the same year. Instead of getting 2 compensatory picks in 2021 and 2022, that netted them 3 consecutive third-round picks. So they got one in 2021, and they used that to take Embree Thomas at the 102nd pick. So that was the one they got for the first one for Robert Saleh and Martin Mayhew. The 2022 pick, there was a bit of confusion on my part and other people's parts about this one. Yep. Because Adam Schefter reported that this pick was sent in the Trey Lance trade. You can go back and see, people are retweeting his original tweet because of the timing of things. You can see that he reported it was the compensatory pick that went away in that trade. I even saw that listed on an NFL.com article. However, all of the current beat reporters are indicating that that one was the one that was traded, was the compensatory that they actually kept their own third rounder. And so that one's been sent away. So the 2022 compensatory was traded to Miami as a part of the deal to get Lance. The 2022 that we get for McDaniel is available now, and that will be somewhere toward the end of the round. We have our own third round pick still this year, the 93rd overall pick. And then we will get a 2023 third rounder still from Robert Saleh and Martin Mayhew, and a 2023 third rounder from Mike McDaniel. So we'll have an additional compensatory pick in the third round this year and 2 additional compensatory picks in the third round next year, as if that wasn't complicated enough. But here are the picks. The Niners have their own second rounder, number 61, their own third rounder, number 93, the third round compensatory for Mike McDaniel, their own fourth rounder, their own fifth rounder, don't have their own 6th, but do have a 6th from Denver, the trade for Jonas Griffith, and then a 7th round compensatory, 3 of them actually, one for Kerry Hyder, one for Solomon Thomas, and one for CJ Beathard. All the other compensatory picks got balanced out by players that came and went at that time. So that is the layout of the 49ers compensatory picks. I mean, this is incredible value that they're getting for being one of the franchises that is willing to promote significant persons of color within the organization. I mean, that is something that Coach Shanahan should be applauded for, something that needs to be done within the NFL, and the NFL making some effort, although not enough, but some effort to reward teams for doing that. And the 49ers are reaping the benefits.
Yeah, I didn't even realize that McDaniels was of African-American descent until some people talked about it. And then they showed a picture of his father and his mother. And I was just like, I thought he was maybe like Italian or something. Like I just had this, but no. So I didn't even know. And all of a sudden everyone's like, yeah, we're getting compensatory picks. So, I mean, good for him being hired for Miami. Cool that the Niners get, something in return for that. It's funny. We haven't even, I don't know if it's one of your topics, but the Jimmy Garoppolo situation, we're probably going to net some picks from that too. So, and going into a draft where we didn't think we had much firepower, I mean, we might end up having a little firepower after all. It might not be in the first round, but the Niners do a lot of their work in the mid rounds anyways. So kind of works out good for them. So yeah, that's interesting.
It does. And if they get 1 pick for Jimmy, they'll have 10 picks. If that's a second rounder, we'll talk about that and debate it in a little bit, but I think it can be as high as that. If they have that, they would have plenty of assets available, 2 seconds and 2/3 in that hypothetical situation, wherein they could trade a couple of those picks to move up into the end of the first round if there's someone that they covet that falls at that point. It's going to be interesting how the Niners use it because they need to fill the roster cheap. I'm going to take this comment because it's a name that's been thrown out there and it's intriguing. But Michael Montez brings in, hear me out, James Bradbury, trade for him. Giants trying to cut money. The second part of that is entirely true. The Giants are attempting to cut money from their salary. However, the Niners right now, overthecap.com reports and is accurate in their figures that the 49ers, with all their future contracts that they have signed now, have 44 players under contract. Those are not 44 players that would make the 53-man roster. That's probably about 32 players that would make the 53-man roster. But they have to build out a roster to get to 90 for the preseason, so they have all those future contracts. With all that said, 44 players under contract, they are over the cap right now by about $4 million. And so it's a question of the Jimmy Garoppolo trade just gets them under the cap and gives them about $20 million to work with. I believe Bradbury's salary is somewhere in like $10 to $12 million range for this next year. That is the type of player where in a trade, the Niners just cannot afford to bring in a player like that. So I love the idea, but unless he's released by New York, I just think the Niners are too cash strapped to make a move like that.
Yeah, the Niners have so many things to do, and they have to fill their roster when they eventually draft their draft picks too. So, a lot of us were talking this talk of, oh, maybe we can get 1 year out of this quarterback and go for the Super Bowl and get it 1 year. And I keep telling a lot of fans who live in that kind of fantasy world, I'm like, it's just not fiscally. You can't do it. There's no way. You have Bosa coming up on a contract. You have Deebo coming up on a contract. The Niners, other than Buckner, have taken care of their own guys. So, right now I'm more worried about the Niners moving on from Jimmy, seeing what they can get. And you're right, building through the draft, building through cheaper players. It sounds kind of messed up, cheap labor, but that's what the draft is, really.
It is.
Teams that draft well stay good for a long time because they keep the train going.
Yes, you have to be able to fill out the end of the roster well through the draft. You have to be able to bring in core special teamers through the draft. Like it is a value proposition. And if you're a talented team like the San Francisco 49ers are, and you want to attempt to keep your core of stud players intact, you then have a very limited amount of cash at the end of the roster to fill it out. And so I think that the Niners probably don't trade up back into the first round. That would be my guess, just because I think if they have 10 picks, they can use 10 cost-controlled bodies on this roster. I think that they absolutely attempt to fill it out with those draft picks.
Agreed.
All right, let's get into the next topic, which is asking a little bit about your opinions around Anthony Lynn coming in and the impact that had. First and foremost, I'm just interested to hear your sense of it. When it happened, were you excited about the move, neutral, or not impressed?
Oh, I was super excited. His story, just the kind of man he is. I watched this one press conference he did with his players, and he was just really emotional, just thanking them for their effort and just the love that in a game with everybody being so disposable and like everything being so disposable, to see a coach that really is moved by his players and their effort says a lot. He's high character. He played for the 49ers in the mid 90s.
He did,
which was interesting. I didn't remember him at first, and then I went back and I watched some old highlights, and then I remembered him. I'm like, oh, okay, I know who that is. He wasn't anything special as a player at the 49ers, but I know he played for the Broncos as well, but I didn't realize how long of a coaching career he's had. He's been coaching since, I think, 2001 or 2000. So he's been in it a long time. And
immediately
after all over.
Immediately after his last stint with the Broncos, because as I gather it, you're right. He played 2 seasons with the Niners, 1995, 1996, 2 stints with the Broncos, the second of which was underneath Mike Shanahan, and you probably guessed it, Bobby Turner, who's been coaching since the beginning of time and will continue to do so in perpetuity. But yes, he is. It does have close ties to the Shanahans in that regard. Obviously, Bobby Turner has been here with the Niners over the last 5 seasons, and it's a big question as to, at age 72, whether he continues on in that role. So a couple of things jump to mind for me. One is the John Embree news came out before this, and so I think that people judge the 49ers, and I suppose rightfully so in that regard, but judge the 49ers pretty harshly for the way in which they treated Embree in asking him to take a pay cut, obviously, as he was no longer going to be the assistant head coach. I'm torn about that, because no organization is going to pay you the full amount if they take away some duties from your job, right? That's just reality. But it also is a terrible look for the 49ers. I personally would have, I think the 49ers PR department dropped the ball on this one. I personally would have attempted to negotiate in good faith with Coach Embree and find some middle ground to where you say, hey, listen, we're taking away these duties, so you cannot be paid the same amount. Like, that's, I'm sorry, but if we're going to bring someone else to fill this role, that's no longer on your plate. But you've done a phenomenal job at your position. I would have offered him something in the middle to have a storyline that you could at least come out with that says, hey, he wasn't going to be assistant head coach, but we offered him a raise over his other salary. We couldn't come to terms, and so we broke apart. Because they didn't offer any of that, and they didn't spin it in the PR department, it just came out that they tried to lowball Coach Embree, and it made him look bad, because that's Kittle's coach. Like, that was an odd look to me. But with Anthony Lynn coming in, it makes more sense. Would you agree with that, or are you still left with a little bad taste in your mouth from the Coach Embree?
Well, I think Anthony Lynn's a total upgrade. Head coaching experience, coaching experience in general. He dealt with a young quarterback in you know who his name is? I can't think of his name. From
Justin Herbert, who ended up getting the rookie of the year that year.
I know he has a strong tie to the running game as well.
Yes.
So all that's plus. There could have very well been, maybe he didn't want to even negotiate. Maybe he was against any type of restructure or demotion. So the Niners fired him. There could have been something. Maybe it's not as clear as they try to lowball him and they just ended up moving on from him. So
And that's
there's
the
always
reality
two
is
sides to every
actually
story.
his contract was up at that point. So he never got fired. It just, they didn't renew him. And again, once you see that money is going to Anthony Lynn, I
Yeah.
do think that changes it. And to me, this is a godsend that you're talking about a team that is looking to change things up in the run game. They have, transformed Deebo Samuel into a wide back. Trey Lance, I would assume, is getting his shot. His champing at the bit is finally going to come to reality, and he will have the reins and you would think be a threat in the run game. So to have someone come in who's entirely focused on this to fill in as the replacement for what you lose in Mike McDaniel, you're talking about a wildly capable running coach. He was the running backs coach and assistant head coach in Buffalo in 2015 and 2016. And in both of those seasons, the Bills led the league in rushing both years. So yes, he has considerable talent and coaching acumen that he's bringing with him. I just want to get into a couple of comments before we finish out on this topic. Ellis10 coming back in. At Rob Schuh, I understand the 49ers squeezing every position to save cap space, but how is it possible for the Saints to be $61 million over the cap and still working deals? So the reality of this is that bill doesn't come due for the Saints until March 16th. So between now and March 16th, they will have to either renegotiate a series of salaries, which you can do. You can move money around, or release players, or trade them away. So the Saints will need to make those moves. They have to have their cap figure right by 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time when the new year begins for the NFL, which is March 16th. So until then, they can do whatever they want with that roster, but they will have to balance the books for that date. But again, teams can push a lot of money down the road and not deal with it until future seasons. I mean, look at the Rams right now. They're at the tail end of building that way.
And, the 49ers, if people forget, in the mid to late 90s, the Niners did a lot of long-term future contracts that put them in cap hell in the early 2000s, where they had a bottom of the barrel roster where they had to get rid of. I mean, they signed guys like, I'm trying to think, Chris Dolman, Richard Dent, Rod Woodson, Ken Norton. There was all these contracts that they signed during that middle of the 90s where they were trying to, in a way they kind of bought a championship a little bit. But
sure, they absolutely did.
The Grim Reaper came calling for them.
Yes,
and in the early 2000s, they had to pay the price because they didn't balance their, they didn't, so to speak, they didn't balance their books. So eventually these teams are going to have to pay the price.
That's right.
And they're going to have to go with a lot of younger players, and you're going to see a huge drop off. The Rams will come due. Eventually they're going to have to move on from all these guys. Hopefully, you would think, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
the
just
pressure's on the Rams to win, really.
Yeah, Odell Beckham Jr. On the edge, Von Miller, both those guys are free agents at the end of this year. They were rentals brought in for that purpose. Niner Faithful comes in at Rob. My dream scenario for me is Jimmy and a third for Marshawn Lattimore, but I know it's unrealistic. The only reason, well, not the only reason, one of the reasons I would say it is because for any player the Niners are looking to bring back, you have to look at their salary. Again, the Niners are going to be really cash strapped. They don't have that many players that they can realistically extend out. So that's the key when you look at players they may bring in. What's their cap figure for next year? That Niner guy coming in at Rob Schuh. If the Niners spend money on a corner, it will be in the slot. Mosley and Embree on the outside. I would tend to agree that the Niners need to fill in that. K'Wan Williams is a free agent. Deommodore Lenoir got a chance early in the season, but toward the end was clearly not favored to be back on the field. Dante Johnson is a free agent. I agree that's where the Niners will spend some assets trying to bring in a slot corner. Do you think the Niners attempt to re-sign K'Wan Williams, Aaron?
I think he's gone. I feel like his plays regressed. He's had injuries. He's older. I always felt, just like a lot of people, like Grant felt, that Deommodore Lenoir eventually would take over that slot corner position. because that's what he's kind of built for. Whereas Ambree's kind of more of an outside guy. So hopefully, I mean, I would still get insurance from that. I mean, if you have a chance to draft it again, why not double down on something? If you can attack something in free agency that's cost effective. The corner position is something that I feel like we need to spend as many assets as possible with, whether it's free agency or attacking it in the draft, because let's be honest, for the majority of this year, that was one of our biggest weaknesses, and teams really, really exploited it. And in the biggest game this year, say what you want about how we played down the stretch with guys like Mosley and guys like Embree. I mean, we didn't fare too well in the NFC Championship game. So I don't feel like personally anybody in that secondary is safe. Like, I'm happy for Embree and how well he played. Yeah. And I'm happy for Emmanuel Mosley, but Emmanuel Mosley is who he is. He's not an elite corner. But at the same time, like you said, they're cash strapped. So they're going to have to make some business decisions on, a lot of things. But,
and I would argue that while Emmanuel Mosley is not an elite level corner, that when healthy, he's a very good corner. Yes. And the Niners don't actually want to pay an elite corner, right? I think
that's not
with their rush first mantra, good is great on the outside because it allows you to build affordable guys on the exterior. All right, there's an interesting question that takes us to our next topic here. Ellis 10 at Rob Schuh, would you sign Deebo and Bosa for a 5-year deal to save immediate cap money? That was the next topic, Deebo and Bosa deals. So here's my take on it. And Aaron, I'm interested to hear from you on whether you think both get done this year. I initially thought they would, that the Niners would push hard enough to get both done. Jack Hammer has been making me reconsider whether the Niners will be able to get over the hump on Bosa. But in regard to the question specifically, before I turn that over to you, Aaron, is around the idea of freeing up cap space in doing it. I don't think so. I think that what you can do is keep their cap figure the same this year while getting a huge deal done. And that's a win. If you can get Deebo done on a deal where I think his salary is somewhere around the $5 million mark right now as far as base salary, if you can keep his cap figure the same while paying him an enormous signing bonus and extending him for, an additional 5 years on top of the 1 year he has remaining in this contract, to me, that's a huge win. With Bosa, the question becomes, is his camp going to hold out enough and push back enough against whatever figure the Niners throw out initially and say, no, we'll just play 1 more year. We've still got the 5th-year option on the contract. The cap figure is only going to go up more, so there's more room to pay Bosa. And if he stays healthy another year, he's now earned himself an additional, $3 million a year over a 5-year deal, so an additional $15 million. To me, I wonder if Bosa's camp is going to try and make it more difficult to get the deal done this offseason. What's your gut say, Aaron?
Well, I know the Bosa deal, from what a lot of people are saying, might be one of the biggest deals as far as defensive player, pass rusher ever. Something that could get upwards of to $30 million, where I heard. And
yes.
I don't know if the Niners just could do that this year, just with with what they have in leftover cap and what they have to do for Deebo and sign the rest of their roster. So I think front loading with a lot of signing bonus and then extending contracts. I've heard that in multiple areas, multiple people, is the best way, because when you extend contracts, you lower cap hits through the remaining years.
Right.
So then, I think the Niners' best bet for both of them, and eventually even when you sign Bosa, the cap's going up in the next couple of years. So that's always a plus. 2, like you said, sign a guy like Deebo to a huge signing bonus, keep his cap hit the same, and then spread his cap, his salary over, 5 extra years. So, I think that would be the best way to the Niners to go about it. That's the thing, man. When you get really good players, the Niners have a really good core, and that's why it's important that Trey Lance becomes the quarterback, because they can afford a little bit more. These windows come and they go, man, and good players are not here forever. And there's a reason why, people talk about windows opening and closing, and you have to take care of opportunities when you get them. So, I think with the Bosa deal, I think Parag Marathe is going to have to go away from his team-friendly stuff that he likes doing with everybody else.
Right.
Bosa is going to need to get paid. There's not going to be
Yes.
any tricks on that one because Bosa's camp will hold out.
That's
this
right.
isn't, what I mean? This is a whole pass rushers like that do not come around often. So
No. And it's
Bosa
not like
is just-
his family is hurting for money, right? His brother
No.
just got paid over $100 million in a contract for himself, and certainly they appear to share resources in chefs, personal trainers. So it's not as if Nick Bosa is at home, well, in fear of not making
income.
that next paycheck. The man is sitting on some wealth already, and I do see him as a bit of a mercenary type, someone, and I'm not faulting him. I think that players have to look out for themselves. The league looks out for itself. The league is not out for players' benefits, no matter how they might spin it. They are out for the bottom dollar, and players need to do that as well. It's a short career. Bosa's had some serious injuries in his time, and any one of those could have ended his career. Unfortunately, it has not yet, but you see why these guys are out for the money they are. Deebo, I think it's entirely possible. My best comp is the Michael Thomas contract. You have the DeAndre Hopkins one out there, but that one is so far out in left field as far as how much he got paid per year that it doesn't seem relevant to additional contracts. But I would guess that Deebo, while his cap figure stays the same for this year, ends up getting an annual average of roughly $20 million per year. And if he doesn't get that, if I'm advising him, I tell him to hold out because Deebo went through a lot physically to do what he did this year. He deserves that money.
Yeah, you can talk showing appreciation for a player all you want and say he's the, he's how the 49er, he's the 49er way, and Deebo is a great human being and all that stuff. But eventually you're going to have to pay and put your money where your mouth is if you really, quote unquote, appreciate somebody. So I think that would be of the utmost importance that the 49ers take care of Deebo first, just for everything he had to do this year. I mean, he's like the employee that you go to work with who knows how to do every single job and do them well. Eventually you have to show that employee some love, give him a raise, whatever they call it. And I think he's definitely, it's time for him. The same thing with Bosa, but like I said, the Niners have one more year, so they can kind of hold out on that. But yeah, getting Deebo done this offseason to me is priority number one over anything, even over the Jimmy Garoppolo trade. Yeah, getting Deebo signed and under contract for at least the next 5 years has to be the Niners' top priority.
Yes, I would think so. I just want to address Matthew seems to be incensed by my comment, and I think you misinterpreted me, Matthew. Matthew saying, I'm sure Bosa wants to be leeching off his big brother's money the rest of his life. Come on, Rob. That's a Grant statement. Matthew, I did not imply nor state that Bosa would leech off of his brother for the rest of his life. My implication was that he's not in a hurry to get a deal done because from month to month, his bills are quite well paid as it stands right now. No, I do not think that he's going to leave the NFL because of his brother's money. What I'm implying is that he can, in fact, hold out. If he gets into a prolonged stalemate, that his trainer, his personal chef, all those things are taken care of because he splits those costs with his brother. Not implying that his brother is going to give him half his wealth or anything like that. But,
and Rob, like we and you said before, that's why it's so important for the Niners to really nail this draft and to get as many picks as possible, because with all these huge upcoming deals, you gotta cut costs somewhere. And the best way to cut costs is to replace aging players or players that cost a little bit too much with younger, cheaper deals, guys out of the draft. And teams like the Steelers, you can say what you want about the Steelers, but my brother, we were talking about this. I think the guy that has been in charge of all their personnel, like draft and all that stuff, he finally retired. I mean, the Steelers don't win every year, but they're always competitive. And they always have a competitive roster. They always draft well. So, the Niners can prolong this. It's just a matter of hitting in the draft. That's why I think keeping Peters for another year, hopefully, is a godsend, because I think he has more to do with the late round stuff
I
in the
agree. You're
mid-round
talking
stuff,
about
then
Adam Peters in the front office. Yes.
yeah, like to me, he's more important than John Lynch. To me, John Lynch is more of a face of he's like the CEO type, the Fortune 500, like the guy that you put as your poster boy. But who's doing the work? I think it's Peters all the way. So we'll see.
I agree. I'm excited that he's still around. Matthew, by the way, I just want to say cheers for coming in and saying fair that, the clarification on my part led to clarification for you. I just love it when people are willing to change their opinion. So cheers to that.
I mean, you're going to change it regardless because we say, but
that's right. That's right. Okay, getting into, wanted to get to this. Archie with the super chat. Bosa jerseys are on sale with Nike. Am I missing something? Not that I'm aware of, Archie. Nothing that I'm aware of for any reason other than end of season, people getting rid of old stock. But no, everything that I have read indicates that the 49ers are going to re-sign him and that will be a priority. I've not heard anything to the contrary, but I will certainly keep my eye out for that. And then I had the NorCal Refrigeration comment coming in saying, at Rob, will Lakin be gone? I think Lakin Tomlinson should be one of the priority re-signs for the San Francisco 49ers next to Arden Key and DJ Jones. Those might be my top three. Lakin Tomlinson, Arden Key, and DJ Jones. And you know me, any chance I get to say a little bit about DJ Jones and his sauce, his barbecue sauce, I'm going to. Because what I need them to re-sign him so that Big Dave, who makes the barbecue sauce, will make a new batch, because I've heard it is sold out, and he probably doesn't want to make any more with the Niners logo on there until he finds out DJ is locked in. So Niners, get that deal done sooner rather than later.
Yeah, Lakin to me is a priority. That left side, I mean, that's one of the best left side offensive lines in the NFL. If they could get him locked down and a guy like Arden Key and DJ Jones, I feel like you let Jaquiski Tart walk, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Guys like Verrett, if they don't want to come back on team-friendly deals, or a guy like Mostert, you got to let both of them, go. I mean, the Niners, you can't pay everybody, and if you're going to pay people that are healthy. So
yeah. And Jan coming in, I actually didn't forget Jordan Willis. He would be right below those three to me. He's on my list. Jaquiski Tart is on that list, Jordan Willis. But to Aaron's point, at some point, you can't re-sign them all. I would love to bring Tart back if he can come back on a reasonably inexpensive deal. I would love to get Jordan Willis back. I think that he is a great depth piece for the defensive line. But eventually you run out of that space. I agree with Michael here suggesting Adam Peters for GM at some point. I get some sense that, with John Lynch, at some point he may want to go back into broadcasting. And I hope, if I'm correct about that sort of feeling that I have, that Adam Peters is still around at that point, because I'm with you. I think Adam Peters adds incredible value for this organization.
Yeah, and the fact that John Lynch said right now, and didn't completely kill the argument of him possibly leaving. When you say, anytime you say right now or for now, I am the GM, it kind of leaves the window open for a possible exit. So
yes, it does.
You're right. Keeping Adam Peters around is super important. If I were the Niners, I would, like I said, I would push him to GM. Maybe, I don't know if you could make John Lynch a 1-year president for the team and then move him out of it. I don't know how you could do that, but yeah, you can't lose Adam
Rick
Peters.
Is with you, maybe promoting him to president. That would be interesting. I like getting creative like that. That wouldn't be a bad solution in my book.
Right.
Johnny comes in with a question before we transition topics. What do you think we will do about the center position? Is Mac still there? Yes, Johnny. Mac is actually, I thought it was a 2-year deal with a 3rd year that was just for the voidable year. It's not. It is a 3-year deal for Mac. He is on the books with dead money if we cut him this season. I think he needs to decide if he's coming back. I'm not certain that has been stated from his camp yet, but the 49ers, as of right now, would have a pretty significant dead cap hit if they moved on from Mac. So I assume that as long as Mac wants to be back, that he is going to be the center for 2022, but the Niners need to find his replacement now. I would draft a center in this year's draft and play him, give him a chance to start at guard where you have that right guard spot that is currently unsettled. But if you don't get Laken Tomlinson back, you have 2 guard spots that are completely unsettled. Daniel Brunskill, also a free agent. So to me, interior offensive line depth is something that will have to be hit in the draft.
Yeah, and I've listened to Grant talk about this. The knock my earpiece out. Both years the Niners are in the playoffs. It seems like they had the same issue in the same position in some of the biggest games they played. That interior offensive line just when they needed it the most just could not hold up. I mean, from center out to right guard, nobody's safe. That right tackle position, I mean, I'm not a big McGlinchey guy, but I was talking to a lot of people and I've kind of gotten off my pulpit and I'm like, okay, I see McGlinchey's probably the best option. Keep McGlinchey, but right guard and center, you got to figure that out.
You have to.
I would draft a tackle and a center / guard or a tackle / swing tackle, whatever. You cannot. You have to add as much to that position as possible because that's one of their biggest weaknesses. But if you go corner 1, it's offensive line. Center out to right tackle 2. Those are my 2 biggest concerns with the 49ers.
Yeah, and we have that same concern by Spy Nick Danger coming in at Rob Schuh. How many seasons must we go without drafting or signing a top corner? I think the reality, Nick, is forever while Coach Shanahan and John Lynch are here. I think they are very true to this mentality of pass rush first, that they are going to build with dominant players along the defensive line and fill in that secondary with capable people, but I don't think invest the type of resources that are necessary to bring in a top cornerback within the NFL. All that said, they could get lucky. They could take someone in the 6th round who ends up being the best cornerback in the league. But without that little bit of luck, I don't think the 49ers are going to invest what's needed in order to get that return.
Yeah, that's just their philosophy that they've been since they got here. It's rush and cover, with rush being the key word.
Yes. Rush first. I see Gizmo coming in here saying, I think the biggest reason we lost the Super Bowl and the NFC Championship game is we could run 3rd and short in clutch time. Are we too much of a finesse run team that fails in the playoffs? 50 yards against the Rams is why we lost. I agree with the last statement that the 50 yards against the Rams is part of the reason that we lost that game. I contend that the 49ers were so banged up and running out of gas at that point that it's not a true reflection of what this team is able to do in the run game. I do think the 49ers need to continue to invest significant capital to make sure that they can stay at a level where they're able to run the ball. And I would say my hope is that the Aaron Banks pick, which I saw someone else reference is a huge miss, doesn't end up being a huge miss. It's just too early to say that so far.
Right.
Was it a miss this year? Yes, absolutely. But he's a bigger guy, and it seems that the pick with him and Trey Sermon and Trey Lance, all of those did fit together in a puzzle piece sort of way. It was a big shift to go from left guard to right guard for Aaron Banks. All I'm saying there is if the 49ers get Mike McGlinchey back and he returns to form, I believe he's a dominant run blocking tackle. Right. If Aaron Banks can take that next indicated step and be a bit more of that physical bruiser at a guard position, and then Alex Mack comes back, Laken Tomlinson gets re-signed, and Trent Williams on the left side, to me, that has the potential, again, to be one of the better, if not best, rushing lines within the NFL. So I'm not terribly concerned, Gizmo, but I think it does require investment in Laken Tomlinson. That's going to be a big contract. Making sure that we have a suitable center. Hopefully that's Mack returning. And then hoping that you get progression from Aaron Banks, or you draft an interior O lineman who's going to be the future center that plays right guard this coming season.
And also, I mean, you look at a lot of the film breakdowns after that game. Jimmy Garoppolo didn't make the Rams pay in that game. For as much as the Rams were playing the run, there was stuff open downfield, stuff that could have been exploited. And, this isn't to bang on Jimmy. but Jimmy didn't make the throws. There was lots of stuff. I mean, guys like Jackhammer, Grant, I'm Jason Aponte. Everybody made it known. Like, people just don't bang on Jimmy to bang on Jimmy.
Yep.
The Niners knew anytime they get into a playoff game, teams know that they like to run the ball first. Well, what happens when you run the ball? Teams are going to block it up. They're going to put 8 in the box. What does that mean? That means the quarterback has to beat you. And unfortunately, since he has been here in the playoffs, Jimmy hasn't been the guy that has been able to make teams pay. Will that change with Trey Lance? Possibly. I hope it does.
Yeah,
but
that's the hope for all Niner faithful, for Kyle Shanahan. I think everyone's banking on that, right?
Yeah.
No doubt. Jan coming in here, and this is the response to it. Jan coming in here at Rob. That was a lot of back-to-back away games, and the Ice Bowl 2 took a lot of steam out of them. No doubt. Again, I was there in Green Bay, and I just have to keep saying this, that if you didn't physically experience that weather yourself, I don't think you can truly understand how cold it was and how much wear and tear that road trip in particular, that physical game in that cold, took out of our Niners. It's hard enough to win one road playoff game. Just go look at any good quarterback's record on the road in the playoffs. It's hard to do. The Niners basically had 3 of them and then lost the 4th. I mean, it was a hell of a run. I just am not taking anything away from them in what they were able to do. I do think that it was reflected in running out of gas a little bit. All right, let's get back to our topics here. A little bit of Richard Hightower being out. I'm interested to hear your takeaways from that and who you think the Niners might bring in, which seems to get a little bit clearer as of today with a couple of hires. A couple of the names that were thrown about for the 49ers, the interim head coach from the Raiders, who is, how do you pronounce that one? Is it Bisecchia is the coach's name there?
I'm not sure.
And so
it's a weird last name.
He got hired away by, I forget who took him on at this moment, but then it left the San Francisco 49ers reportedly being interested in Joe Judge. And we had the comment earlier asking about Joe Judge, but the thought was he was going to get hired because of the connection between he and Josh McDaniels in Las Vegas, and then the opening because of Bisecchia getting hired as he did, that would then open the door, which I think was to Green Bay. Bisecchia goes to Green Bay. And then that would open the door for Joe Judge to come in. But right before we started this program, the Raiders released a press clipping saying that they hired a special teams guy, and it was not Joe Judge. So to me, this is an interesting one. I'm interested to know your thoughts on Hightower and his exit, and if you're excited about Joe Judge at all.
Definitely excited about Joe Judge. I saw a tweet. I'm gonna tell you who it is. It's Javier Vega.
Nice.
He says Hightower being hired elsewhere isn't and shouldn't be a surprise. And he took the rankings of Hightower since he's been with the 49ers. 2017, special teams ranking 11th. 2018, 14th. 2019, 12th. 2020, 23rd. And 2021, 26th.
Yeah.
So it was definitely a progression for the worse. So I hate to sound like an uneducated fan because I kind of don't know who Joe Judge is. I've heard of his name before, but
sure,
Hightower being gone, to me, it doesn't hurt because that special teams unit for 99% of this season was horrendous. I mean, we talk about 3 phases of the game: offense, defense, special teams. How many times did that special teams end up biting us in the rear end during the season? In games we were close in. Seattle, twice, I think it was. I'm thinking, right? We see it happened with Seattle twice. It happened with the trying to think of what game it was at the end where they threw in it and Josh Norman was out of position. Was it the Bengals game? I couldn't remember.
That's a great question. Somebody in the chat will know that for sure.
Point being,
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Him being gone to me is a good thing. Not as a human being, but just as a special teams coach or coordinator, whatever you want to call him. I just think the Niners need to improve in that area. I think they need to think about getting a new punter as well, man. I am not a fan
I'm good with Mitch. I love Mitch. Oh, man. I'm sad to hear that. I'm sad to hear that.
I am not a Wisnowski guy, man. I mean,
I don't want him handling kickoffs. That to me needs to be our kicker, which unfortunately, means Robbie Gould, who is an older guy. So that's the inconsistency for me. But if it were just punting, I'm good with Mitch. Oh, and sticking people, because the man can lay some hits.
Yeah. But
All right, so getting into Joe Judge, just to give people a little bit of a backdrop there to get some information, because I think there's a chance that this is who the Niners attempt to bring in. He was the special teams assistant and coordinator over a period of time for the New England Patriots between 2012 to 2019. Most people remember his traumatic year last year with the Giants, right? And being the head coach of the Giants. It being a not so positive situation. But that to me is an indication of his leadership ability. By the way, the game that we were trying to think of earlier was the Titans game. It was the Titans game. But anyway, back to my thought here was around the idea that Joe Judge, while he had the rough years with New York, and that illustrated he shouldn't be a head coach, his time with New England illustrates a fantastic special teams coach. Every single year he was there as an assistant or the coordinator, the Patriots were top 10 in DVOA metric for the special teams unit. So you already spoke to what the Niners were during that period of overlap with Richard Hightower. To me, that would be a huge upgrade. The other name, credit to NinerNoise.com, reading this one, back to your comments about the Seattle game, there is Tracy Smith, who is a special teams assistant in Seattle, and their unit was ranked 5th this last year. They took advantage of the 49ers, and to me, that would be one of those names that you could potentially, drag out of a division opponent that is the next up-and-coming coordinator in that regard. To me, the interesting thing about letting Hightower go was the idea that they didn't ever report that they were going to fire him. They didn't ever say, we're moving on from Coach Hightower. They basically allowed him to secure his next gig before mentioning that they weren't going to bring him back. To me, that was the ultimate respect move of he and Kyle Shanahan, where they go back to their days at Texas in college. And I just, I have respect for the way in which they treated Hightower.
Yeah, once you kind of look at it in the bigger picture, you can kind of understand, why some of these moves end up, how they end up coming together as they do. Sometimes you let a guy get another job and then tell him pretty much if you're going to stay here, you're not going to quite be at the same level. So let him go on to where he's going to be and wish him all the best.
Yeah, I agree with Silent Seth here saying Joe Judge is a bad head coach. That doesn't mean he's a bad special teams coach. I agree, because there were other comments coming in. That Niner guy, please God, no Joe Judge. Sean Boy, Joe Judge is horrible, who does a quarterback sneak on 3rd and 8th. Shaking my head. Thankfully, those calls would not be up to him as the special teams coordinator. You would keep him focused on what he is good at, which is special teams. But let's get into that next topic here, talking about our rookie, no longer a rookie come next season, but Trey Lance working on that throwing motion. This was reported by Kyle Shanahan. I don't think it's a surprise. I don't think that it's the type of thing that when Kyle Shanahan said it, you think to yourself, oh my God, this is breaking news that just came out. But it confirms where his focus is right now and the level of development that he's at coming into his, or will be at, coming into his second season.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was great news that he's going to work on his mechanics, because he does have kind of a funky long delivery that needs to be shortened up. We like we talked about, I think I've talked to you about it. I've talked to other people like Jack Hammer about it. Like the stuff that Jimmy's good at, Trey kind of struggled with, the short intermediate stuff. Jimmy lives over the middle, and he's, for the most part, when he's not throwing it to linebackers, he's accurate. Trey kind of struggles with that stuff. Jimmy can't really do it much downfield or stretch to the perimeter, and that's where Trey excels. So you're kind of, it's like a trade-off. So now it's just a matter of trying to refine the things that Trey hasn't been doing well, and where the areas where he is struggling or is behind, and trying to get that to as close to where you need it to be for the season starting next year. And I'm sure it's going to be something he's probably going to work on more than just this coming off season. He might, A lot of people were talking about Pep Hamilton, but that ended up, going. I think he ended up becoming, I think, an offensive coordinator. I forgot what team it was, but a lot of people were saying Pep Hamilton is really good with quarterbacks and that he would have been perfect for Trey, but that's not happening. But the fact that Trey's going to take time to work on his mechanics, I think that just shows you how much of a mature, smart, level-headed kid he is for only being 21. There's also talk that he's going to try to work with Brandon Ayuk in the offseason, which I find kind of interesting because I always felt like Brandon Ayuk and Jimmy Garoppolo weren't always I didn't get a good vibe between the two of them.
Didn't seem to always be on the same page.
No, and with Trey, it's kind of, it just, I don't know, it speaks volumes that he's going out to work with them. So I'm happy for the kid. I really am excited. I'm fully invested. I told my nephew, because, I've told you before, me and him are very kind of like negative.
Yeah.
We both were pretty happy with how far the Niners got this year. Not to say that we accept failure or anything, but talking about the kid, I told my nephew, I said, I'm all in, bro. I'm all in on Trey, man. I'm all in. I said, you got to give him time before you make any type of judgment call. Just like us as fans, when we talk about rookies, this rookie class is a bust. And we said that a lot about a lot of the guys we drafted this past season.
Yeah.
And now look at him. Me and other fans, especially me, we got to give things time to develop. So with Trey, my patience is high. A lot of fans are, you're going to get your, the people that really love Jimmy, the stands that are going to be like, see, told you he sucked. Like if he has a bad game, and it's like, dude, it's going to happen. So yeah, I'm pretty excited. I'm glad he's doing what he needs to do to make his game that much better.
To me, this was the benefit of allowing him to sit this season, because you're looking at someone who, coming out of college, I think a lot of the scouts that were reporting on him, a lot of the pre-draft coverage talked about throwing motion. It talked about someone who was actively working on that, someone who needed to address that. And for someone to be taken number 3 overall in the draft and to be working on throwing mechanics becomes a bit of a concern. But if you are able to give that individual time to develop, because the concern, as it's explained to me, not as someone who has firsthand experience in changing my throwing motion, but as it is accurately explained to me from experts on the subject, this is something that when you go through and change your throwing motion, if you then are under live bullets very quickly, the tendency is to revert, to go back to your old throwing motion because you haven't taken enough swings, so to speak, with the new throwing motion, so that when your body's under duress, when your mind is under duress, you go back to what you're comfortable with. If he's given the entire season to have been working on it, got some playing time, got out there, but not enough to form any bad habits, and then gets an additional offseason to work on this, man, to me, that is going to be the difference in his development. I saw him in person at the Seattle game, and I was filming it in his warm-ups and just happened to notice it, that in that little 4-man rotation where it is Jimmy Garoppolo, Trey Lance, and then 2 receivers, and they throw it back and forth and toss it to the quarterback.
Right.
Trey missed some of those throws. They're like 10 to 15 yards, right? And they were bad overthrows. And after he missed them, you could see him pumping his arm as if to try to remind himself of the motion he's going for right now, to get a little more snap in the wrist or whatever it is he's attempting to get out of that motion. To me, I'm glad that he has this additional time to work on this, come back next season and really have it dialed in. I'm confident that he is the type of gym rat that he's going to get this down.
And I like the fact that he's an athletic quarterback that, sometimes, when things aren't there, he can, because I think a lot of people are thinking he's just going to come in next year and it's going to be, smooth sailing. I expect there to be some hiccups just for the fact that he's inexperienced in the NFL and he didn't have a lot of college experience. I'm fully expecting him to have some struggles, but the good thing sometimes as you're growing as a young quarterback who maybe in certain aspects your game is a little more raw, you can depend on that athleticism until that other part of your game kind of meets up with the rest of it. So I'm personally glad that he's working on all that stuff, and I think that's going to be better for him in the future. But at the same time, I'm glad he's the type of person and type of athlete that, if he has to move out of the pocket and make things work with his legs, at the end of the day, man, it's about winning football games, and like whatever it takes, I'm down with this kid. I'm excited. I like his mindset. I like his maturity, which is important at quarterback. I don't think people realize how important it is to have a mature quarterback behind center. So yeah, I'm really stoked for him coming up next year. This offseason for him, I think, is crucial. And hopefully more than just Ayuk work with him. I hope other guys work with him too. Because that would build a lot of camaraderie.
As do I, and I love that you are preaching patience with Trey. I think Niner faithful need to get on board with that.
Yeah.
I got to bring in Bonnie and Clyde here. At Rob, can we get some pump fakes in as well? Jeez, I'm tired of batted down
both
balls.
Him and Jimmy. What's up with the batted down balls, man?
I didn't want to relive that, but I thought it was clever. Had to bring it in there. All right, let's talk a little bit about Jimmy's trade compensation. This one's been beat up a little bit, so I'll just give mine. I have stuck with it, and I'm sticking to my guns. I think the Steelers get it done, and I think it's a second and a fourth this year. That is my official prediction. I feel like I made it back in November, and if it's right, I'm going to need somebody to go pull the receipt for me. If we get to that point, I will offer maybe a free mug giveaway. I got a few of these now. This one's getting sent out to Leo. Leo, I'm sorry, I haven't sent it out yet. It's going out tomorrow. But yes, I have others that will be given away. I may need someone to find that November sound clip of me predicting Pittsburgh, if that's what happens. But what do you see as the trade compensation coming back for Jimmy?
If I'm totally on board with what you're saying, a second and a fourth. I mean, like you were saying, financially wise, Niners having a first round pick is just not feasible because they don't really have the money to pay a first rounder, right? So, double down in the second round if you have to, or trade up, at different points throughout the draft. Trade back, trade up. Give yourself as much ammunition as possible. So a second and a fourth. Somebody in the comments says, "Keep dreaming," or "You're dreaming." Maybe. But I think that's a fair compensation.
Sarah's not sold on us getting a second and a fourth.
But I think it was Mayoka, or it was it's Mike. It's Mayoko, and there's the other guy too,
Matt Barrows.
Talking about the load of stuff that teams got for guys like Sam Darnold.
Totally.
And all these other quarterbacks. And I'm thinking Jimmy's better than all those guys.
Sam Darnold, Carson Wentz. Like, it's just there's supply and demand. There are not enough starting caliber quarterbacks.
And this draft is weak at quarterbacks. So
totally. That's what dictates compensation.
Yeah. If you are right on that one and it's like a second and a fourth or a second and a fifth, I'd be totally fine. I think that's great. I would be ecstatic. That means I take day one off of the draft, not watch it at all. And then, the next 2 days, my feed is going to be up watching it and enjoying myself. So that's awesome.
Arturo is more optimistic than I am. First round, at least. I think if it's a first rounder, it's a conditional first rounder, but that means it's not this year's draft.
No.
So I would almost rather have a second rounder this year as opposed to a first rounder next, depending on who it's coming from, where it would be in the round, what team it's coming from. So what chance it has of being a mid first round pick.
Plus you trade him to the AFC for sure.
Yeah. The only problem with getting those picks that can fluctuate is needing to allow the season to play out and Jimmy to either get that team to the playoffs or not. Well, we should know soon enough. Let's give a nod before we close this program as it's coming to a close. Around the 49ers players who made it to the Pro Bowl. Just to give the stat lines, the 49ers had 5 players on the offensive side. And I know all of you are thinking, how did we have 5 players on the offensive side of the Pro Bowl and come up so short in that regard? But please, don't torture yourselves. Let's just focus on the fact that Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, Kyle Juszczyk, Alex Mack, and Laken Tomlinson were in, and Bosa and Williams would have been in there if not for injury. So phenomenal showing by the San Francisco 49ers on their roster. Deebo, 3 catches, 26 yards. Kittle, 4 catches for 43 yards. And Juice, 2 for 18, but the all-important touchdown as he vaunted through 6 defenders to get into the end zone there. It was a pirouette of sorts as he got into the end zone. What did you make of the Pro Bowl? Did you see any highlights? Did you watch it at all, Aaron?
You are a really good person because you see the positive. And dude, the Pro Bowl to me is It's unwatchable.
It was almost unwatchable to me this season, bro.
I'm glad my Niner guys are there, but I don't want them to get hurt. I don't know. Make it like a flag football or something, skills competition, like a lot of people are saying. I just can't get into it. And now that a lot of players go in there knowing that, if they're coming up on contract extensions or they're trying to get a big deal, people aren't trying to play in that game.
No.
I'm glad you found the positivity. I knew you would, because that's the kind of guy you are. I didn't watch the Pro Bowl. I had zero interest. I'm happy that we were represented. That makes me happy, because that shows that we have a really good roster and that we could be good for years to come, which is a whole other thing. But I didn't. No, I'm not a Pro Bowl dude. So I was going to tell you, just stop. Like, I don't care, but it's your show. It's your show.
People are with you. Armchair QB1. I'd rather watch a flag football game. Niner Empire. It's a joke. What I will say is, Matthew Mears, what is the Pro Bowl? I totally forgot about it. I'm with Silent Seth here, though, that I'm really in it for the skills challenges. I think that's one of the angles that the NFL needs to take in order to revive it. They have to get better at the skills challenges. They need to get more of the players involved in that, because the game and the kind of hugging, kind of tackling, kind of touch football was awkward. Like, it just, they got to come up with a new set of rules. They need to reimagine it somehow and inspire players, because I don't want it to go away in its entirety. But I agree with your sentiment and those in the comments that for the most part, the game was pretty unwatchable.
Yeah, it's, everybody has their own opinion, and to each his own. There was somebody in the comments who said he hasn't watched it in 20 years. And I don't blame him. I don't think I've watched a Pro Bowl really. I don't think I've ever really watched a Pro Bowl, to be honest with you. I didn't watch it as a kid because I was usually so distraught and hurt over the Niners losing to the Cowboys or the Packers or something. So by the time the offseason came, I needed my time for my mind to mentally repair itself from the disappointment. So, yeah. To each his
I also
own.
like Kimmy's take here, which is like, it's entertaining for the kids. It's family fun. That's
fair.
true. Like, we think of it as like harder core fans that we are. But there are kids coming up who want to see their favorite player playing dodgeball, that want to see like these things that happen at the Pro Bowl that aren't your traditional nuts and bolts of football, but introduce a different side to it. So that's an interesting take.
Yeah. It's our last ditch effort to hold on to something worth really, concrete as far as football goes. Because after the Super Bowl, it's pretty much, wrapped up until August with the preseason. So it's sad. I always look at because the Pro Bowl used to be after the season, so that was kind of it, right? So part of me
that
was
everyone
interested.
could play.
Right, I was kind of interested in a little bit just because I wanted to see my guys represented. But for a lot of the years that I watched the Pro Bowl, the Niners sucked. So like there was nobody there for a really long time after the 90s.
Yeah, that was really rough.
Yeah, like in the 90s, in the late 80s, early 90s, I mean, it was like Montana, Rice, this guy, that guy, Roger Craig, everybody, And then we went through like the whole 2004 to like 2010, where it was just like, why would you even watch a Pro Bowl? It'd be like Frank Gore and Staley, and that would be it for the whole team. So
that's rough. I'm actually on board with Silent Seth here, saying that you could make the game itself flag football, and it would be watchable in that regard. You would be calling it what it is and not pretending it's tackle and make it flag. They got to imagine it some way. But let's move on from that topic and close this one out real quick, just on Super Bowl thoughts. Obviously, the Niners aren't in this one. We don't need to get into any nuts and bolts around how either team is going to win it. I will say that for me, it's really simple. Can the Bengals offensive line hold up just long enough to give Joe Burrow the chance to chuck it downfield to all those weapons? That's about as in-depth as I want to get on this Super Bowl, but I'm interested to hear your psychology around it, Aaron. How are you going into this one, and will you be rooting for one team over the other?
I got into it with a Rams fan, and here was my basis for what I said. I said, I just don't like the whole buy your team or, get everything through trades and free agency and get to the Super Bowl based on that. Because to me, that's just, it's, the window's short. The pressure's on you. You have to win it because then all those moves would be, would be pointless. I just respect teams like the Bengals who've been bad for a really long time, and they finally figured it out with coaching. They finally figured it out with drafting, and they built this thing from really nothing to a Super Bowl caliber team. So in my heart, I'm going for the Bengals just for the fact that I just respect the way that they go about how they go about doing it. I think the Niners, I was talking to my nephew yesterday, and I told my nephew, I was like, look at all the guys in the Niners. Look they're all draft picks. You got Deebo, you have Ayuk, you have Kittle, you have Greenlaw, you have Warner, Nick Bosa. Like the Niners core was all built through the draft. That's how you sustain dominance. So I just don't really respect the Rams. And then you get the people, the whole fan base being like, they're not really that, big of a fan base in LA, and then all of a sudden everybody's getting cocky and people are coming at me and they're coming at you. And I'm just like,
they're coming at you and they're coming hard at this point in time.
If that's going to be the case, like I'm totally rooting for the Bengals. I just always root for the underdog too. And I root for the team that isn't like the way the NBA is now with how everything's built through, super teams and stuff. I don't respect it. I mean, we all grew up through the era of Jordan and, Jordan finally getting past the Detroit Pistons and getting to the NBA Finals and the Bulls being a dominant franchise. The Niners finally getting past the Cowboys.
Yes, there's something so picturesque to that.
When you just kind of build your team and you go play Madden and turn off the salary cap and you just start adding all these best player. I want the best corner, the best defensive tackle, this really good quarterback. To me, I don't know. I just don't respect the method. I guess in the end, the job, it gets done either way. But I mean, if you put a gun to my head and ask me, I'm going for Cincinnati all day. Plus, I like Joe Burrow. He reminds me a little bit of Joe Montana because he's really cool.
Yeah.
But I also get a Dan Marino vibe from him too, because Dan Marino was like super cocky as a quarterback.
He was.
So there's like a little Montana Marino-esque kind of mix to him where like he never looks rattled. He never looks scared, but he's also kind of a jerk, kind of a way. I don't want to say the other word that I was thinking because I'm trying to keep it PG, but
I appreciate that. That's much appreciated.
He's kind of that word, and I'm okay with it. So yeah, I'm kind of rooting for the Bengals.
Me too. I mean, so I agree with the sentiment that I saw here in the chat somewhere that calls out the idea that the more talented team is the Rams. It was DM's comment. Rams will take it, he says. They're too talented unless they procrastinate in the second half. So I put that up there to say that this is me acknowledging the Rams should be the favorite in this. This is me acknowledging that I do believe the Rams are the more talented roster of the two, and that on paper, the Rams should win this. So this is my tip of the cap to the Los Angeles Rams, who I believe beat us fair and square, took that game, physically outplayed the Niners. That is me acknowledging that fact, and then emotionally saying that, much like Luke Luna coming in here emphatically saying, "Go Bengals." That's how I feel as well. And I'm with these people that are saying that Joe Burrow feels like the real deal, according to Matthew in here. Niner faithful, go Bengals. Ricky Williams, go Bengal Tigers.
Wow, we have Ricky Williams in the chat? That's
Bomber,
awesome.
Joe is ice cold, baby. It is, I mean, people are excited for the Bengals, and part of it is this idea that they're due. Trevor Marks coming in. They due for a Super Bowl. They may be well overdue for that Super Bowl. No question about it. You just see it over and over again. I agree that it's that much sweeter when you come in and you crest that hill, as opposed to just going out and buying a fancy ass car that can do it for you, right? There's something magical to fighting, and then taking that next step. And it feels like that could be the case for the Bengals. So that's who I'll be rooting for. I will be coming back with more breakdown of the game. Jack Hammer and I will be on this program on my channel Friday. I believe we are penciled in at 3:30 on Friday. I'll post it on Twitter. You can follow me at The Left Shoe. I will definitely be back tomorrow for the usual mailbag episode at 5 p.m. I will be sending out the request for your mailbag questions on Twitter from the left shoe tomorrow morning. If you want to submit your questions early for that mailbag, send them to 49ersmailbag@gmail.com. Content will be coming out regularly from the channel. Do not worry. It will follow the 49ers offseason, and it will keep you informed. As always, like I said earlier, I will say it again. I enjoy having Aaron from 49ers First Takes on. He's a phenomenal guest. His information is down below in the description of the video. If you enjoy the content, please consider hitting the like button on this video, subscribing to my channel, and then heading over and doing the same for Aaron on 49ers First Takes. Aaron, it is always a pleasure having you on here, good sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. It's
Absolutely.
This offseason is going to be kind of slow for a couple weeks, and then we're going to ramp right back up. So I can't wait.
We are right back into it.
Yep,
All right, Niner faithful. Until next time, cheers.